How you doing? This is the guy from Pittsburgh, and you got certain guys on the internet with their programs, and they sound like this. And that's a bunch of sea lions talking. Now, that's how I'm starting to feel with Jesse the Body Ventura, the former governor. You know, he came out with 2 books. I got both of them on my shelves. They've killed our president. There's one. I don't know if he ever came out with a 3rd book or not. And 63 documents the government doesn't want you to read. Well, he had a show the other day. Now, I don't got a polar bear. This is the closest thing I got to a polar bear. My little friend here. I'll call him Christmas Bear. He is a bear. He's dressed up for winter. So he had the polar bear guy on. Now, this guy went to this eco-freak thing in New York. All about global warming. 400,000 guys show up. And then after this thing is over, they leave all their signs in the street, and all their garbage and their mess, just like leftists always do. About 1,000 of them decide to traipse down the Wall and Broad Street. Now, this was a Sunday, but, you know, people still got to get around in New York City. So they block Wall and Broad Street. And 63 or something of them get arrested for disorderly conduct, including the guy wearing a polar bear suit. Now, I don't know how hot it was in New York, but it's got to be pretty hot wearing a polar bear suit. So Jesse Ventura fixates on this guy. He brings him on his show. Now, one of the things that was disappointing, I wanted to see the guy in the polar bear suit. If you're going to have the polar bear guy on, put him in the suit first. You can take the suit off or the head off, but you know, you want to see the guy we look like. He had pictures of him, but I would have liked to see the guy actually try to talk with the head on, because it was bad enough he talks at all. He went on and on. It was like torture. How we have to get political change. How the polar bears are all suffering and the Eskimos are suffering because the ice is melting. And yet parts of the ice cap in Antarctica have grown, not melted. And certain portions of the Arctic ice cap are growing back and they ain't melting. We did see 35 sows and walruses get stuck out there because the ice melted where they were. And even Jesse Ventura admitted in the video, last year in Minnesota was the coldest winter in years. Now I'll have to ask my administrator, Justin, hi Justin, if it got really that cold last year in Minnesota, because he's from Minneapolis, so he should know. But this guy went on and on. And then Jesse Ventura showed his true colors. He tells you to search for the truth, make up your own mind. And, you know, he rails against the oil companies, saying, I'm off the grid, I live in Mexico. Well, I don't care where the hell you are. Whether you're in the United States, Canada, Mexico, Central America, South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, Antarctica, Australia, India, China, or anywhere, Europe, United Kingdom, Ireland, New Zealand, Hawaii. There's one fact you can't get around. Everything on this planet gets delivered in some way by oil. It either comes in by truck, it comes in by plane, it comes in by ship, it comes in by rail, it gets delivered to your house by a UPS guy or a FedEx guy or the post office guy. It gets to your local supermarket in a big truck and then they unload it. Or to your liquor store in a small truck. But every piece of food we eat, every bit of gasoline we put in our cars, every piece of clothing we wear gets delivered in some way by oil. And Ventura and this guy, particularly Ventura, who said we have to have an alternative energy source other than oil. Well, Jesse, what the hell is that? Less than 1% of American cars being sold are electric. Nobody wants them. We still have nuclear power plants, coal-fired power plants, and diesel power plants in this country. They're working on fusion in France with CERN, but who knows, that may take 5 years before that becomes a viable reactor, and 25 years before it becomes commercially viable. Then you won't need, if they get the bugs out of it, they won't need nuclear power anymore, and maybe they can develop a small fusion reactor that everybody can have in their homes. You can go solar, but I hate to tell you this, Jesse, but the silicon, the metal, and everything else they use to build solar that you're touting all gets delivered by trucks, and they get delivered to a factory that puts out chemicals into the air, into the water, and it's all delivered by oil. So unless you can find an alternative, and he says we need to get rid of the internal combustion engine. What are we going to replace it with, Jesse Ventura? A horse? Skateboards? Bicycles? You're going to deliver a pallet of Meow Mix or Doritos, a big box of Doritos on a bicycle all the way from the plant in Dallas, Texas, where they make Lay's potato chips and things like that. You can deliver motor oil for the aircraft, because you're still going to have aircraft unless you want to end the aviation industry. Oh, you want to end internal combustion engine? Yeah, that gets rid of shipping too, and gets rid of cruise liners and yachts, and with the auxiliary engine, that gets rid of all your pleasure craft. I guess all of us will be walking under Jesse Ventura's New Mexico Nirvana Hour. Jesse Ventura is coming up more and more like an idiot every week. He had another video on where he talked about 3 Republicans that were being paid off, according to Jesse, by the energy and oil companies. And then suddenly he fomented about the fact that one of them, I knew it, was a Baptist. So right there he showed that he's bigoted against Baptists. But both these guys, the one guy, we need to do something about this. We need political and social change. We need government to do something. Government's trying to do everything they can. That's why we got a president who threw away $7 billion on failed green energy programs that didn't work, to companies that all went bankrupt. They gave him political donations, then they went under. So that was all kickback. So Jesse Ventura, you need to get your head out of your butt and realize that until we have a viable alternative, hydrogen or the solar-powered car or something where you don't have to plug it in, because if you plug in the electric car, then a power plant has to generate that electricity, and that produces more pollution. And the biggest global warming thing on the planet is the sun, except for, in a sense, it's not as big as the sun, but you got volcanoes. There's 2 in Guatemala. There's a couple in Mexico. There's one in Alaska. There's one in Washington. There's some in Italy, and they're all active. And they're all spewing stuff out in the air 24 hours a day. And when those things go off, they spew a ton of stuff into the atmosphere, and it gets globally cooler. Or maybe globally hotter, I'm not sure. All I know, it blocks the rays of the sun, and the heat gets trapped. So that adds to global warming. If it gets too hot, it gets too much stuff in the air, it will lead to a nuclear winter, but not with a nuclear bomb, but a volcano. Like that Yosemite thing, that if that ever goes off, we're all doomed. The caldera. So, Jesse, you need to do some basic science. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And energy is not created by, when you use energy, it's created, but it's taken in a different form. So if you burn a match over here, then you got carbon over here. If you burn motor oil, you got CO2 and other emissions coming out of the back of the car. Oh yeah, and they mentioned the EPA declared CO2 a contaminant to the atmosphere. Well, that means we better get rid of all the trees and plants because 50% of their output is, guess what, CO2. So your trees contaminating the atmosphere, the evil trees and the evil plants, it's time for them to go, and I guess we won't be able to eat any vegetables or fruits because all those trees we bulldozed. If the leftists were to get their way, because that evil CO2 is coming out of those evil and mean and nasty trees and polluting the atmosphere, and they want to get rid of cows because they got methane coming out of them, so we'd all go in vegetarian. Oh yeah, and speaking of vegetarians, got a nutcase in Oakland. They arrested him, a folk singer, vegetarian, because he set 5 buildings on fire in Oakland and Alameda. I don't trust vegetarians. They're all weird in my experience, and I sure don't trust folk singers. If you remember Animal House, what John Belushi did to the folk singer's guitar, well, that's how I feel about most folk singers, because most of them can't sing worth a damn. But Jesse Ventura is obsessed with global warming and an irrational hatred toward the oil companies. But until we come up with something better, that's what we got to deal with. All right, this is the guy from Pittsburgh, Free Art Bell, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.